The chemicals that have been classified under health hazards of the Class Regulations 2013 are those chemicals posing a hazard to health. These chemicals are classified into various health hazard classes with hazard statements or H codes in the H300 series. There are basically two approaches to conduct an assessment of risk to health, which are 1. Full assessment, which is conducted using method of Chemical Health Risk Assessment (CHRA), and number 2. Simple assessment, which is conducted using method of Simple Risk Assessment and Control for Chemicals (SiRAC), the application of which is depending on the hazard class of the chemicals, chemical use situation, and the complexity of the work process. Where can we apply SiRAC? SiRAC method applies only to chemical hazardous to health in solid and liquid forms that are supplied for use at the workplace. Typical examples include powder coatings, degreasing solvents, and cleaning products such as varnishes, ink and paint, and chemicals for making into other products. Two most significant routes of exposure of chemicals into a human body are inhalation and dermal. SiRAC only covers exposure of chemical hazardous to health through inhalation and dermal. SiRAC does not generally apply to the types of chemicals which are A. Chemical classified as carcinogenicity category 1, mutanogenicity category 1, or respiratory sensitization category 1 under class regulations. B. Process generates dust and fumes, example wood dust, fume released from molten metals, and so on. C. Organic dust, for example grain dust, cotton dust, and paddy husk dust. D. Gases, example hydrogen sulfide, ammonia, and etc. E. Schedule waste, as listed in the first schedule under the Environmental Quality Schedule Waste Regulations 2005 or as amended. The first step in selection of assessment is to identify the chemical used in a particular work unit and its hazard. The assessor has to make sure that it meets the criteria to conduct SiRAC and if the required information is available or not. There are two possibilities of this section, either a yes or a no. If the outcome is yes, a simple assessment SiRAC can be conducted and will lead to a control approach that can be made from a group of controls called control approach 1, 2, or 3. If these control approaches are sufficient, then it leads to development of action plan and implementation of the action plan. However, if the selection of the control approaches 1, 2, and 3 doesn't bring up a solution or reduction in exposure, it will have to proceed with control approach 4, which is to seek specialist advice such as industrial hygienist and hygiene technician. On the other hand, if the criteria to conduct SiRAC does not meet, And if the required information is not available, which is an outcome of no, a chemical health risk assessment (CHRA) has to be done instead. An action plan constructed with the result of the CHRA conducted and the referred to the control approaches 1, 2 or 3. However, if it is not sufficient to reduce the exposure, it will proceed with control approach 4, which is to seek specialist advice as well. The last step would be the implementation of the action plan that has been constructed. Who can conduct SiRAC? The person to conduct SiRAC should have adequate knowledge, training, and expertise in understanding the hazard and risk. Know how the work activity uses chemicals hazardous to health. Have the ability and the authority to collect all the necessary relevant information. Have the knowledge, skills, and experience to make the right decisions about the risks and the precautions that are needed. Know how to interpret safety data sheets (SDS). Have knowledge on chemical control measures. Know basic requirement of OSHA, use regulations, and relevant guidelines. Have knowledge on the SiRAC manual and undergone SiRAC training program by approved training provider. Control approach 1. Action: general ventilation, a good standard of general ventilation and good working practices. Control approach 2. Engineering control, typically local exhaust ventilation ranging from a single point extract close to the source of hazards to a ventilated partial enclosure. It includes other engineering methods of control, example, cooling coils of 4 vapors, but not complete containment. Control approach 3. Containment. The hazard is contained or enclosed, but small-scale breaches of containment may be acceptable. Often used where a substance is very hazardous or a lot of it is likely to get into the air. Control approach 4. Special action. Specialist advice is needed in selecting control measures and to seek further help. Each control approach covers a range of actions that work together to reduce exposure. 1. Good plant and equipment design. 2. Regular housekeeping and cleaning. 3. Regular maintenance, examination, and testing of equipment. 4. Worker training and supervision. And 5. In some cases, using PPE. How to conduct SiRAC? In the first step, gather information regarding chemical register, SDS, label, information about the task where chemical is used and total duration of use, existing control measures such as general ventilation, and other data such as layout plan, process flow, and number of workers exposed to chemicals, is investigated. Subsequently, identify the actual work area or process using chemicals and select a task to be assessed. Record the information obtained from these results in accordance with the Form SA-2A of the SiRAC manual. Secondly, check the hazard classification and relevant hazard statements from SDS of each chemical and obtain H codes. Determine the hazard groups. For groups of A, B, C and D, using Table 3.1 of the SiRAC manual based on the H codes. If there are several H codes which appear in different hazard groups, select the strictest group. A is the most lenient and D is the strictest. Record the hazard group of each chemical in accordance with the Form SA 2B of the SiRAC manual. Next, determine the scale of use with Table 3.3 based on the amount of chemical used per operation or batch or a day in the case of continuous operation. The scale of use can be classified into small, medium or large. The largest category must be selected if the amount is not clear. Furthermore, the volatility in case of liquid form and the level of dustiness in case of solid form must be identified. After that, identify the control approaches from 1 to 4 in accordance with Table 3.6 based on the information of hazard group, scale of use and volatility or level of dustiness obtained above. Therein, select task specific from Control Guidance Sheet CGS stipulated in the Table 3.10. SiRAC records should be maintained by the employers for at least 30 years. According to use regulations, the employer shall review the assessment if A. There has been a significant change in the work that could affect the outcome of the assessment. B. New or improved control measures are implemented. C. More than 5 years have elapsed since the last assessment. D. Directed by the Director General, Deputy Director General, or the Director of Occupational Safety and Health.